In this video, I will show you how to make a strong Elementalist Comet build that will allow you to get thousands of damage per Comet hit in Roboquest. Following this build will also simultaneously help you unlock the Final Flash achievement, which requires you to deal more than 1000 damage with a single Comet. Please keep in mind that it does take a while to get this build going, and it is not recommended for newer players. If you have not unlocked the Elementalist yet, I do have a guide on exactly how to do so on my channel. With that being said, let's get into it. The most important aspect of this build are the perk upgrades that you can get from leveling up in order to scale Comet's damage with Trinity and Elemental damage. There are 4 class-specific upgrades we need in order to get this build going in no specific order. You'll need to get Robo Wizard, which allows you to scale Comet damage by up to 75% with 3 stacks. This can be further maximized with the Big Tank upgrade that adds an additional 2 stacks for another 50% increase in damage. You can also take Tactical Mantra for more sustainability, but it isn't as necessary as the other upgrades. You will also need Meteor, which gives you an additional 50% damage increase and 100% radius to Comet after using Trinity. This perk can be upgraded with Private Blast, which increases Comet damage by another 30% when hitting a single enemy. Power Infusion is another vital upgrade that buffs the Mantra passive ability. Mantra allows you to cycle through each element every 10 seconds and buffing the current active element by increasing that element's damage by 15%. With Power Infusion, you can get an additional 15% bonus damage while also increasing all damage of non-active Mantra elements. You'll need to upgrade this with Comet's Infusion in order to maximize the damage output for Comet that this perk grants you. The final perk you'll need is Warning Blast, which will increase your weapons and Comet damage by 35% for 6 seconds after using Trinity. The only upgrade for this perk you need to look out for is Battle Fever, which increases auto critical chance by 20% of Comet while Warning Blast is active. I did take a Rapid Fire upgrade for this perk, which did not significantly upgrade this build. For the non-class specific perks, you need to take Chemistry, which increases elemental damage by 10%, and this can be taken twice. Special Trick is also important as it increases Comet damage by 15%. I ended up taking Size Matters as my 4th common perk to buff my weapons. If you're enjoying the video so far and plan on trying this build out for yourself, then drop a like, then let me know down in the comment section below. And I do plan on doing more build videos like this every week, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss a thing. Items are the second most important thing in this build that'll further increase your elemental and critical damage with Comet and weapons. You'll want to get Toaster for increased burn damage against burning enemies by 25%, which scales nicely with Comet's Infusion. Yo-Yo for increased cryo critical damage by 25%. Drum, which adds 15% chance to ricochet with shock damage. Hot Dog, which has a 50% chance to deal a burn explosion while taking down a burning enemy. This item can be skilled with explosive damage perk and items. Candle increases burn or explosion damage by 10%, which scales nicely with Hot Dog. Winter Hat, which has 20% chance to deal a cryo explosion when freezing an enemy. Microphone is great to scale Comet damage directly by 10%. And Fancy Button, which increases Comet damage by 30% against enemies with 90% or more health remaining. You can also take Ugly Tie and Bow Tie to increase your damage against bosses, and are the 2 items I always take for every build I'm running. Take any items you find that scale larger weapon magazine size or higher fire rates, as this will help you sustain damage whenever you aren't using Comets or Trinity, which will be the case while you are working to get this build up and running. The fantastic items Air Freshener and Beach Ball are great to take for survivability, or Tiny Bicycle for extra damage output, and I suggest you to grab them if they appear in your runs. Unlike most builds in Roboquest, your weapons aren't as important for this build, since we are scaling fire rate and large magazine sizes with our weapons alongside elemental damage. we need to get a weapon with pre-existing fast fire rate and large magazine sizes. The best weapons for this would be the Tommy gun and the windmill rifle. I've also found that the jump beam rifle is a great substitute. An essential weapon is the starter pistol because it has the Havoc affix that grants 30% damage increase to Comet while equipped. You can upgrade the starter pistol at Oasis. You can find this affix on SMGs too, but only grant 20% damage increase instead of the 30% from the starter pistol. The main flaw with this affix is the requirement of having the designated weapons on hand in order to utilize the damage increase. At higher difficulties, this will be more important to consider. Upgraded Buddybot is a nice secondary option as he can take the aggro off of you for a limited time. With Buddybot upgraded, he'll have a shield that keeps him alive during intense combat situations. Buddybot is great to have for this reason in higher difficulties, as having a way to not get shot at is huge. As a bonus weapon suggestion, I have found the epic version of Splasher works very well with elemental builds and can absolutely melt entire groups of enemies once you have the proper elemental upgrades. If you have gadgets unlocked, you should always have them equipped, especially jetpack and grappling hook, as they become absolutely essential in order to maintain high mobility and survivability at the Guardian difficulties. I have done some testing with these sunglasses and found that the 25% decrease in health means that you lose over 100 health at level 14 with them equipped. However, not having these sunglasses equipped means you'll lose 30% damage and can severely impact your runs negatively at higher difficulties. Keep these sunglasses equipped for the extra damage. If you do not have all of the gadgets unlocked in Roboquest, I do have a guide that shows you how to unlock all of them on my channel. In order to play this build as effectively as possible, you'll need to slightly adjust your playstyle. You'll still want to be moving around as much as possible to avoid getting hit. However, to dish out damage, you need to use Trinity first to activate Warning Blast, buff, and then use Comet. Whenever your abilities are on cooldown, you will be using your primary weapon. So it's important to have a weapon that has a high fire rate, as well as perks and items that increase your fire rate as well to sustain damage while your abilities are on cooldown. It's important to note that you do need to play as aggressively as you can to maintain high damage output with this build. In order to get the Elementalist Nuclear Comet build running, we need to obtain the 4K class specific perks that multiply Comet's damage tenfold, as well as elemental damage as a whole. You'll want to use any perks that provide more Comet damage and items that buff your elemental damage. The guns you choose ultimately comes down to your own personal preference and the upgrades you take for your weapons. For these reasons, this build is pretty difficult to get going and does take some time. This can be excruciating at higher difficulties, especially if you aren't able to survive with the minimum damage output at the beginning. If you've built this correctly, you'll be doing over 1,000 damage per comp consistently, which will help you unlock the Final Flash achievement. There are definitely alterations you can make to this build. For example, instead of focusing on high fire rate, you could switch it up and focus on high critical chance and damage, but that just comes down to personal preference. If you want me to make a build guide on a specific build, then let me know down in the comment section below. I do plan on making more videos like this in the future, and I'm always open to suggestions. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.